Minor clash of opinion there on Parliament Hill today ahead of the fall economic statement. Traditionally, a government budget guidepost assessing economic movement since the last budget and setting the fiscal stage for the next year's spending plan. But since their election in 2015, the government has also used it kind of as a mini budget of sorts, taking the chance to lay out new spending programs. Against the backdrop, though, of a volatile and unpredictable global economic reality, even a domestic economic reality, how much room does the government have to play tomorrow? Let's bring in the front bench to talk about that. Sabrina Grover was a federal Liberal candidate in the 2021 election. She's now a principal at Shakti Strategies. Shakir Chambers worked in Prime Minister Stephen Harper's office before becoming a policy advisor to the International Trade Minister. He's now a principal at Earnscliffe Strategies. Kathleen Monk is the former director of communications to the late Jack Layton. She's now the principal owner of Monk and Associates. And Laura Stone is a Queen's Park reporter for the Globe and Mail. Hi, everybody.
Hey there.
Good to see you, Kathleen.
Hi.
I'll start with you. What do you think is behind the impetus or the drive for the government to move away from like Budget 2.0 to what this used to be more of like an update on where things are at?
Yeah, well, why have to produce two massive policy and economic documents as opposed to just producing one? Because it used to be that way, where we would focus on the budget that would be in the spring sometime, and the fiscal update in the fall economic update would frankly just be the numbers, almost like the foundation on which they would build their next budget. I remember actually Jim Flaherty, when he was finance minister, actually really downplaying it, not doing it on off weeks or trying not to even present it in the House, in terms of trying to really downplay the importance of this document after we tripped him up, of course, in the coalition attempt of 2008. But I think that really what people will be watching tomorrow for the fall economic is, what actually is the fiscal anchor, right? You heard that in your previous interview with Mr. Politz and with Mr. Manley. People are looking for that. But I think what New Democrats are looking for is sustainability. And that means actually, like, how can we help people but still also ensure we're not spending so wildly that our frankly our social programs are bankrupt for the future. So we have to look at the revenue side too, and that's where folks like New Democrats would point to, thinking about actually some of those higher taxes on some of the price gouging companies.
Well, Shakir, Kathleen mentions one of the kind of political pressures on the government heading into tomorrow, right? That's the ask and the agreement, the asks from, I should say, and the agreement with the NDP. What other pressures do you feel are on the government ahead of this tabling of the document tomorrow?
Just delivering for constituents. I think there's a lot of folks who just want to see some kind of immediate relief, right? We know there's going to be billions of dollars dedicated to housing initiatives. On the affordability piece, it's not really clear what they're going to be doing, right? There's some competition language, but I think folks just want to see, what are you going to do to kind of address my pocketbook concerns? What I would hope we don't see is just kind of a relisting of what they've done over the past 8 months, or even since they've gotten reelected, and kind of saying, hey, look at what we've done to kind of support you. I think folks want to see some new measures because there's clearly been a demand to deal with cost of living, and clearly what the government has done so far has scored them no political points, right? Just look at the polling numbers. So we'll see what they come up with. In terms of the spending, I think it's important to point out 40% of the money promised in the last budget has yet to be allocated. So I think they have a lot of room to kind of maneuver or reallocate some dollars to kind of bring to fruition, whether it's affordability measures or even additional housing measures. So they do have money to play with. We'll see what they do with it.
Yeah, I guess the places they play with it, to say it in a weird way, if I might, Sabrina, are going to give us an indication really of kind of, I think, the message that they're hoping to land with it, and with whom. Because to Shakir's point, I mean, a lot of when we talk about inflationary spending, it's at the provincial level as well, where it was more broad-based. Here's a check for you. Here's a gas price relief for everyone. Whereas the measures the government has done so far have been more targeted, but also therefore more limited in political impact for them.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things that they really need to achieve, or that Freeland really needs to achieve with the fall economic statement tomorrow. I think to the point that everyone's made, obviously, number one needs to be a reinforcement that this is a budget, or this is an economic statement, I guess a mini budget, focused on affordability and focused on affordability for the individual Canadian. And that's really where people are struggling the most, right? Their home budgets are the most problematic right now. Interest rates are affecting them the most in their personal pocketbooks. So I think they have to be able to communicate that message. But I think that the other couple of things that they need to do is reinforce consumer confidence by saying that this is a budget with respect to fiscal restraint, but also that reinforces larger economic stability, and that Canada economically in the world is in a stable place, and that this budget is going to continue to push towards that. I think that's really important, both for government revenue and for continued investment on the business side. And I think, you played a clip earlier of Pierre Poilievre talking about the things that they'd love to see in the budget. It's really easy to be in opposition and talk a big game, but I think that if this was a Conservative budget, you would see massive cuts that would also affect Canadians, right? Like if you think that they're going to just cruise on through without cutting things like childcare, I think we're wrong. And so I think that this government needs to show that they're there for Canadians, that the affordability measures will be there, and that at the end of the day, like, you'll be protected from your pocketbook, but you'll also be socially protected as well.
I guess the difficult balancing act for the government is to be able to do all of that and be all of those things to that many people, Laura, while at the same time try and land the message that the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister has been talking about for so many months now, which is that this won't be something for everyone, right? So you're trying to be all things to everyone, but then you say at the same time, you're not going to be.
Mm-hmm. There seems to be a desire here not to really make any big waves. It looks like the Liberal government doesn't want to raise expectations in order to not let anyone down. They're really downplaying this, and talk of officials on background speaking to reporters saying it's a slim document, not many new programs to be contained. So they're obviously trying to kind of tamp down these expectations from people and focus on those really big bread and butter key issues. Housing, affordability, but not really on those flashy things. It doesn't seem like there's going to be any kind of flashy new programs like a $10 a day daycare program, for instance, which would be more of a budget item, but nothing new that everyone's going to kind of be focusing on. Okay, billions for affordable housing, we're hearing, for rental construction, clean tech investments. Frankly, Vashi, it seems like they're trying to be kind of boring here and fly under the radar. I mean, the Liberal government has been hammered over the past many months by all sides, particularly by the Conservatives, on these affordability issues. I think they really are trying to kind of fly under the radar here, not make any big waves, and just kind of stick to the program, stick to those big bread and butter issues that they know everyone's talking about, housing and affordability. And of course, to keep their dancing partner, the NDP, happy with new rental construction and other affordability measures. So really here, I'm just not expecting any giant surprises in this document.
What do you think about the sort of strategy behind that, Kathleen? Is it good politics? And to Sabrina's point, like, I think she's right that, the Tories it's easier to be in opposition, and they certainly, we ask them all the time, what will you cut and stuff? But at the same time, they have been able to shape the economic narrative over the last number of months.
Oh, for sure.
To their advantage, if you look at any public opinion poll right now.
And not only have they been effective at characterizing the Liberal as careless in their spending and that their fiscal path was a wrong one and they've chosen to juice the economy when they shouldn't have, frankly, a lot of the business community is coming out too. Those voices we're hearing more and more from the Business Council of Canada and from the Chamber that the government needs to rein in. So not only has the Conservatives been strong in their critique of the Liberals, but they actually have an echo and a chorus from the business community, which is problematic. But to your question about, the strategic investments we will see tomorrow, I do think that it's important that the investments we're hearing, we are in a housing crisis. So the government coming forward with $1 billion potentially, we're hearing this is one of the leaks, that we'll see $1 billion in affordable housing construction and nonprofit. I think that that's a good news story that we can actually see hopefully some movement on. And frankly, the private sector will also be receptive to the fact that there'll be new loans. These are loans, they're not grants, they're not freebies. They will collect back on them, but to actually spur that construction. I think that Canadians will see we know we're in a crisis, we need things to move. The question is, will it move fast enough, right, for them to get any political benefit from it?
Well, yeah, Shakira, and circle back to your point there to conclude on. I mean, a lot of this stuff, even if it's around affordable housing or housing supply more largely, would have been landing had they made the announcement 5 years ago. Not to say they should have, but had they made it, would have been landing now. It's really difficult to see the fruits of your labor when you're talking about big things like housing supply or even affordability, addressing affordability with interest rates that, might keep hitting for the next 18 to 24 months.
Yeah, so I go back to the point you were saying, Sabrina, and even Kathleen. The whole thing of having a slimmer document right now, I think the focus they want it to be on housing and affordability, and they only want that message. I've been very impressed by their message discipline leading up to this document. They've stuck to housing and affordability, maybe sprinkling a little fiscal restraint because Minister Annan's been driving that narrative, but they've been laser focused on saying those two things all the time. And I think that comes from the fact that in the spring, if you look at some of the polling, when the Liberals started to go down in the polls, a lot of Canadians were saying, you know what, they're talking about a bunch of things that we just don't even really care about. We care about cost of living. We care about inflation. We care about grocery prices. And they're talking about a range of issues that people didn't really have as a priority. So I think right now they want the narrative to be we're dealing with housing and affordability in some way. And hopefully after tomorrow, that narrative will continue to reign forward into the next budget, because that's what folks care about. And the Liberals just have been misaligned with the interests of Canadians, according to public polling.
Okay, I'm going to take a quick break. The front bench, all of them, are sticking around on the other end of that break. We're going to talk about some renewed scrutiny on the billions of dollars the federal and provincial governments in Ontario are subsidizing a new EV battery plant in Southwest Ontario with. We're back in just a moment.